Okay. So, I almost feel like I showed you this picture the other day. This just being, you know, a room interior with some sort of magic light coming through. Um, so here again, sort of a summary of what is on your handout that you're going to look around. And since we just went over that and it's written, I won't read through every single thing. But the general thing, to quote Minor White, is to remember that you're not photographing what it is, you're photographing what else it is. And so I mentioned earlier that photography from its inception had not always been used just purely to document. What's pretty cool is really when it was brand new, look at this, 1844-ish, this photograph was made, and at first it was really more of a scientific pursuit, just trying to get the chemicals to work and all this stuff. But pretty soon, pretty early on, people like William Henry Fox Talbot and Louis Jacques Monde de Guerre were some of the first ones to start clearly arranging things. Like you can see by this arrangement, the diagonal of the shadow parallel with the diagonal of the room, and you know, there's some care that's taken there. And if we look at this, this is an artist's, you know, in Daguerre's studio, obviously sort of a still life mimicking what we would have seen in painting back then. And so this one by Brassai, a Hungarian-born artist, I think we also talked a little bit about this the other day, the idea that for him this was very commonplace. Yeah, I found their slide too, I'm proud of myself. It's, to him, it's just paving stones. You know, it's just a picture of a road. This is like, for us, this is like a picture of Highway 1. You know, but he's recognizing the beauty and the light as it falls on the stones. And this one I thought was really interesting. This maybe not so commonplace, but certainly in the world of abstraction. It's a photo looking through a hole in the wall when a lot of the old houses in New Orleans were being kind of torn down when the city was sort of, you know, there was a lot of rebuilding going on, and he was really there to document a lot of it. So this is in 1945, and you can see he's sort of seeing it like the shape of a head in the wall. And now up into the, well, actually, no, this is going back, 30s. So there's kind of two schools of photography in this country at this period of time. The West Coast school is really, they call themselves the F64 group because they really want that maximum depth of field. I would have shown you a picture of a boulder field by Ansel Adams in beginning photography. He was a member of that group. Ed Weston was a member of that group. Both of them worked a lot out in California. And so Weston did take a lot of landscapes, but he was also known, which cracks me up, as you can see in the slide, there was a period of his artistic development that we call his shells and peppers period, because he was photographing what else it is by means of a subject that was often peppers or shells. And you can see this beautiful pepper is actually really, I mean, it looks like a Brancusi sculpture of a couple embracing, you know? And it's kind of inspiring to me too. Like, this is not in a big fancy lighting studio, right? It's just an overcast day with a stainless steel mixing bowl, bouncing that light around and making that gorgeous scene. So then we come to my all-time favorite, Joseph Sudek. He got called the poet of Prague. That was sort of a nickname that gets applied to him in history. And see that arm, his hand in the photo? That's the only one he's got at that stage in his life. He was injured in a battle as a soldier, and so he lost his right arm, and he'd been training to be a bookbinder, and like bookbinding with one arm is like not bookbinding. Like you really need both hands. So he took up like the easy craft of view camera photography. I mean, you can see the camera there that he's got. That's the big giant camera that has to be on a tripod and all that. So that was what he settled for, since he only had the one arm. And but that's not really why he's my hero. It's maybe one reason, but the real reason is like, so he's lost his arm in the war, right? World War II comes along and he's again, oh hell no, I'm not doing this. I'm not even going outside for this. And he didn't. He stayed in his little Czech Prague apartment, sort of in the outskirts of Prague. There's a little courtyard. I'm sure he went out in there, but he never stopped photographing. He made the most beautiful, poetic work day after day after day. And it might be a simple arrangement like what you see on the tabletop. It might be the changing in condensation on his windows as they looked out into the garden and the courtyard. This one, there's very little in sharp focus in here. This is like some sort of frosted pane of glass with some kind of architectural feature or something behind it kind of projecting through. And then, I forget, I think it's like a little ashtray on the ground, on the floor right there. Here you can see lots of letters. This is a roll of 120 film unrolled, a peach pit. He did this whole series called Labyrinths in my studio, where it's just like the masses of stuff and just really, really beautiful work. But I didn't want to have this be the total Joseph Sudek show, so I limited myself to just those slides. And so then, of course, Minor White. Look at that lovely title, wow. Windowsill Daydreaming.
That's gorgeous.
I found another photo of his that was called Windowsill Daydreaming as well, it seemed to be. So maybe it was sort of more than one series. But yeah, look at that remarkable little pool. I mean, it's got this very physical sense. And so bird lime is a nice way of saying bird poop. Like, doesn't it look sort of, I think of the Perseid meteor shower. I was trying to take pictures of the meteor shower last night, but you got to have a meteor to get a picture of it. So, I saw one, and it was while my camera was still saving the image that it had taken before. Ah! But doesn't this with the high contrast that he's put to it so that the stone is very, very dark and the bird lime is really, really bright. It feels very celestial to me. An empty head. And it's just frost on the window. I mean, to us, that's not commonplace. To us, we're like, you know, but yeah.
That is gorgeous.
And you can find, Art Store? Art Store has over 700 photos of Minor White's work on it. And we all have a free account there. So log into Art Store and just search Minor White, and you'll have all kinds of beautiful stuff. And of course, they're really big image files, so they're rich and gorgeous on your screen when you open them.
Art Store, ARTSTOR.
No E. No. And you get to it through the databases in the library. I may have a link on my syllabus to it, but you definitely, it's really expensive every year. I mean, we spend thousands of dollars a year to have this account with Art Store, and so we want you to use it. You know, we want it to be that. So yeah, you probably go into the library databases, and when you click on databases, then you can get to it from there. And to log in, I believe it is just your My Nichols stuff. So the same thing you would use to get into Moodle. So again, with the Commonplace, this one, it's hard to see your own daily world as poetic. It's easy to get really excited about like the bird lime on the beach because it's like to me that would be a pretty wonderful place. But yeah, bird crap on a beach when you live in Point Lobos. Yeah. Mouse. Like I imagine this as just like the kids' playground on her block, and it was raining, and she was walking with her camera, maybe. So what it ain't, right? Um, this is a series. Byrne and Hilla Becker are known for making these series of. They're very very left brain sort of photographs. They're sort of observing function and form. And so like these are all blast furnaces. And so it would be presented just like this, like 9 of them in kind of a grid. And so you're sort of admiring the form of them, but it doesn't really seem so poetic. You know, it seems a little more cerebral than that. So that was my example of like, yeah, they're commonplace. You know, I mean, it's like you like photographing grain silos along the Mississippi here or something, but maybe not so much poetry. And then on the flip side, you know, I had to do something gross for that. So the human pin cushion at the circus, definitely not commonplace. so look for regular things, not remarkable what we're doing. And of course, some student examples. The darkroom class, right? She kind of boosted up the contrast a little higher than she normally would have when she made this print. So this is just maple leaves floating on some water with some pretty heavy reflections. But we have filters in the darkroom that increase the contrast of the print and, you know, make the blacks blacker and the whites whiter. And so she kind of, you know, it just really made these reflections much more defined, and I think really succeeded in, I think Meyerwart would be very proud of that photograph. Yeah. And it might be just things, this one's not so abstract, right? I think this is more a case of thinking abstractly about your subject. Just a piece of old, you know, broken decorative iron railing that's been sitting against the house for so long. It's sort of, there's something different about this one. It's not really documenting that this thing was that way, but there is something sort of universal. Yeah, it kind of does.
Tells you've been through a lot.
Yeah. And I started pairing them up just to save slide space for the slideshow and all that. But so these are not made by the same person. They're not even related, except that they both fit vertically side by side. The one on the left, her son was taking a bath, and she had a mirror sitting flat on her countertop, and she had just set, like, this is actually a bar of gel, you know, that glycerin soap. And she just sort of set it up there in his little bath toy at some point, maybe while she was drying him off, and realized that this wonderful kind of reflection and otherworldly space was happening with the glass bricks on the wall. And then here, I think that qualifies for this class. Some of these weren't necessarily made for this assignment, but I like stole this. I love the way this one parallels with the Brassai picture of the paving stones, because I think this is just so, there's something really remarkable about that reflection and the way the values and the textures and how dark this line is, that's just made by shadow on the edge of the paint stripe, for goodness sake, you know? But it's sort of like hyper real in a weird way. So I think this one's just brilliant. And this somehow stops short of being too cute or like, oh, that's a handmade doll. I remember when my grandma made a handmade doll. There's something sort of interesting, like this sort of strange dialogue that seems to be taking place between these elements. I went back and forth. I almost didn't put it in the slideshow, and then I thought, no, I think that does. In a really strange, intangible way.
Sad and empty. Like,
it is kind of unsettling too. Yeah. Yeah.
ooh.
That just seems so much like the Earth to me. And it is a rotten, moldy satsuma on a downspout. Isn't that amazing? It's like this ethereal object when it's in black and white.
So,
Yeah. And this, she just sort of came across this. I think some little kids have been playing with these little figures or something, or maybe it was a grave. It might have been a grave and someone had set them, but then kind of moved them. But I always thought that was sort of a poignant little scene somehow. Like I don't even know. I feel like the communication of it even goes beyond the specific religious beliefs represented by the figurines themselves. And this is just, like an individual for anyone, any denomination.
makes you feel like a very small person in a very big world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and without it being cheesy Toy Story.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because if she'd composed it with, say, I don't know, the wheel of a Volkswagen behind it, that would maybe be cheesy Toy Story. But this is
It's
more.
like it's really high up. And
Yeah.
just a huge world around.
Like when you think about the vastness of the pandemic and its impact starts to become more and more aware, you're like, holy crap. Or when you hear about, like people say, when you stand on the edge of the Grand Canyon, you're like, no, you can't possibly imagine.
It's awesome.
And they use these words. They say you realize how small and insignificant you are.
Feels like that picture.
But yeah, I don't think it does. Yeah. And this one too, there's a really nice something y'all are gonna love about these cameras is these, because they take pictures on it. These are like the equivalent of a full frame digital camera. So when you set a wide aperture, you're gonna get really shallow depth of field. So you're gonna get effects like this that you weren't able to get with your crop sensor digital
And that
camera.
means it's blurry in the back and
Yeah. Whereas like that much is in focus and nothing else.
You have to set it up to do that? Like
It's a little bit on your aperture and a little bit how close you are to your subject. Yeah.
I've seen that one.
And yeah, I use this so much because I feel like it's such a good lesson. So I'm sure you've all heard me talk about it before, that it's like someone kept their camera with them wherever they went. And in this case, that's break time from work. You've got 15 minutes. All we get to do is go to the loading dock behind this door and just smoke a cigarette in this beautiful environment. But such a kind of a poetic photograph. That would be an example of the photograph. It doesn't rhyme and it's not really floral, but it's still a poem. Definitely a little more kind of documentary and about place. I think a little bit on the edge of being illustrating or telling a story, but I don't know. Somewhat timeless. And this I put in, again, I was sort of back and forth. So we've got this extreme angle of view, which maybe starts to make things a little more dramatic than necessary. But because of the way they really sort of emphasize the doorknob, we think about all the hands that have turned it and the life, I guess, the coming and going and stuff like that. So, yeah. Yeah. I think this is my last slide. This one I was just thinking about how it's kind of a nice send-off slide of like just go off and find your world, your poetry to photograph. I just love the light on those things. And again, yeah, it's just, it's a cool pair of shoes, but I think it's the light just gracing those shoelaces and having the background behind it. So there's the potential to go outside, the potential to go explore the world. And that just wonderful lightness, I think that's what really makes it. Yes, I did remember Commonplace. So, erase to the stop recording.